President Trump continues to drift around trying to find desperately any way to get out of this war with Iran. He's trying to sound tough. He's trying to use military strikes. He's trying to use threats. But so far, none of it is working. And in fact, most of it seems to be backfiring. And as we try to figure out where President Trump even can go, how can he get out of this, I think it's really instrumental and helpful to really kind of break this down, this whole war, into different pieces. It's not just the war, but when you understand some of the component elements, things come into a little bit more clarity. And I think you're going to really enjoy what you're about to see. And we have back with us one of our favorite guests here, Professor John Mearsheimer, international relations theorist, professor of political science at the University of Chicago, and dare I say it, sage on foreign policy stuff. And you're about to see why I say that. Professor, welcome back to the show as always.
I'm glad to be here, Danny, to try and figure out what's going on in the world.
Yeah, that's why we love to have you on here, because you have a vision and a lens to see things that just not very many people do, and that's so helpful when you're trying to figure out, first of all, what's going on, and then secondly, how we can get somewhere good. Let's take a look at, first of all, you have said in recent days you're kind of breaking this down into three different pieces, not one but three. First was the first 40 days, then was a blockade, and then where we are now. Can you start off first of all with what you think with the first part, which was the air war?
Yeah, I think the way to think about this is to focus first on the air war, then on the blockade, and then on what I would call the tit-for-tat attacks, of which there have been three. So let me just sort of walk you through this. The war started on February 28th, and from February 28th to about April 8th, this is the 40-day war. It was a bombing campaign. It was a strategic bombing campaign where the United States and Israel together hit targets in Iran and did extensive damage inside of Iran. That stopped on April 8th, in good part because it wasn't working, but also because we were running low on ammunition. Then on April 13th, we transitioned to the blockade. That's when President Trump put the blockade against Iran into place. And then on June 17th, when the memorandum of agreement was signed, or the memorandum of understanding was signed, the blockade ended. So just to think again about the big picture here, February 28th to April 8th is the air war. And then what happens is from April 13th until June 17th, you have the blockade. And what happens on June 17th, when we sign the memorandum of understanding, is that the blockade ends because blockade wasn't working. The blockade was not bringing the Iranians to their knees any more than the air war did. So it's very important to understand that the reason President Trump signed the memorandum of understanding on June 17th is because the air war and the blockade had not worked, and we had no more cards to play. And this is why I think you could call the memorandum of understanding a surrender document. Okay, now we are in a phase where we have these tit-for-tat attacks. And actually what you've seen over the past week, this is from July 7th to July 9th. That's from Tuesday to Thursday of this week. You saw three tit-for-tat attacks, one on the 7th, one on the 8th, and one on the 9th. It's very important to understand that this is the third set of tit-for-tat attacks, right? What's happening, or what has just happened over the past few days, is actually nothing new. The first tit-for-tat attacks were between June 9th and June 11th, just before the memorandum of understanding was signed. And that's when the Iranians shot down an Apache helicopter. And we had two sets of tit-for-tat attacks, June 9th to June 11th. The second set of tit-for-tat attacks was June 26th to June 28th. This is right after the memorandum of understanding was signed. And again, we had two sets of tit-for-tat attacks. And those tit-for-tat attacks, the June 26th to June 28th ones, involved the United States facilitating the movement of tankers through the Omani Channel in the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians said that's unacceptable. They attacked a tanker, and that's what led to the June 26, 28 set of attacks. What happened here is on July 6th, this is Monday, the Iranians again attacked, in this case, 3 tankers in the Omani Channel in the Strait, and this led to 3 sets of tit-for-tat attacks. So Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you had separate tit-for-tat attacks. So basically, that's the big picture. We've put the air war behind us. We've given up on the blockade, at least so far, and we moved to a world where we have tit-for-tat attacks. And the 2 tit-for-tat sets of attacks that have occurred since the memorandum of understanding both involve ships going through the Omani Channel in the Strait of Hormuz. And just to finish here, in both cases, the attacks stopped after a few days, and we're in a sense back to square one.
And so actually, we may not be back to square one. We may be behind square one, maybe square zero, because since these tit for tats have happened, let me see if I can pull the right one up here. Where'd it go? I think this is the right one. Nope, that's not the right one. Sorry. Oh, this is right here. You see that the traceable vessels through the U.S. corridor in the Omani lane, this is as of this morning, you see, have effectively ground to a halt. So even the tit-for-tat stuff, you talked about how the air war didn't work, the blockade didn't work. Well, now the tit-for-tat stuff is not working because Iran maintains control. So the only thing passing through is through the northern corridor that the Iranians have done through their territorial waters, and they have effectively shut down here. Where does Trump go now?
I mean, I've long argued, as you know, that Trump has no choice but to implement the memo of understanding. I don't know what the war-winning victory is, a war-winning strategy is here. As I like to say, please tell me what Trump's theory of victory is. Again, the air war didn't work, and the last thing we want to do is go back to, to restarting the air war, right? I guess you could do the blockade again, but it didn't work last time. What makes you think it's going to work this time? And furthermore, the tit-for-tat attacks don't work. Danny, let me say a word about the tit-for-tat attacks. As I said, there are 2 previous sets of tit-for-tat attacks, one before the memorandum of understanding. That was the June 9th to June 11th. And then 2 of them after the June 17th memorandum of understanding is signed. And the first one, of course, is June 26th to June 28th. And then we have the recent one. You get a lot of coverage of the U.S. attacks on Iran. You'll see film footage, and Central Command will talk about all the damage that we have done to Iran and so forth and so on. But we never hear anything about what Iran does to U.S. bases in places like Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, and Qatar, right? These appear to be the 4 targets that the Iranians went after this past week. We just don't know. And as we know from other examples of Western reporting on the effectiveness of Iranian attacks, at first hardly anything is said, and the impression is given to all of us that the Iranians have not done much damage, that all the drones, all the missiles are shut down. And then a few weeks later, reports come out that the Iranians have either destroyed or badly damaged virtually every American military installation in the Gulf. And you see a similar situation with regard to Israel, by the way. You would get the impression, reading the mainstream media, when these attacks are taking place, that the Israelis and the Americans together are shooting down all the ballistic missiles that are aimed at Israel. But then you later find out that those missiles have been deadly effective. All of this is to say, Danny, when we talk about these tit-for-tat attacks that are taking place, like the ones that we have seen over the past 3 days, my surmise is that the Iranians are doing a lot of damage. It's not just the Americans who are pounding Iran. It's the Iranians who are pounding the Americans. So these tit-for-tat attacks, I do not believe give the United States any coercive leverage. I just don't see, again, what the theory of victory is here. And by the way, we've played this 3 times now. As I said to you, there are 3 sets of tit-for-tat attacks, and it hasn't given us any leverage that I can see in any one of the 3 cases. So this is why I said we were back to square one with, of course, your qualification added on.